About system integration. Sorry. Hello, I'll be talking about system integration and testing of an integrated optical beamforming network with millimeter wave phased arrays. This is the final talk for my master thesis, and I'm supervised by David, Stefano, and Maurizio. The supervising professor is Professor Jörg. So the goal of this project is to demonstrate optical steering of a 60 gigahertz antenna. The project comes under the framework of the SNF Ambizioni project, which aims to design a monolithic transceiver for 5G networks. The thesis focuses on transmitter. The application for such a beam steering network is in user tracking for 5G mobile networks, in satellite communications, and also in high-speed radar. So here I have a block diagram of the transmitter system, where we have an optical input which is given to the chip. The chip has an optical beamforming network followed by optical to electrical conversion. The electrical signals are then taken to a feed network PCB, which then ensures proper coupling to the antenna. And this is a visual representation of the system. So we have the optical fibers giving input to the photonic chip via fiber array. On the chip, we have an optical beamforming network whose output is given to photodetectors. The photodetectors then convert the signal from the optical to the electrical domain. The output is then taken using coaxial cables to a feed network PCB. The feed network is in the form of microstrips, and the PCB has a microstrip to antenna transition, which ensures proper coupling to the antenna. The antenna eventually radiates in the 57 to 66 gigahertz band. So I talked about beam steering, which is that we need the main lobe of the antenna to be directed in different directions. So this is how the system is expected to function, where I can see four different main beams depending on which input is selected. So in this figure, the red input corresponds to the red beam on the plot, the green input corresponds to the green beam, and so on. And now I'll be talking about different components of this system as part of the talk. So let's begin with the photonic chip, that is the optical beamformer. Here is the layout of the photonic chip. We have on the chip, we have a waveguide for fiber alignment. This waveguide is simply grating to grating, measures the grating to grating transmission and lets me ensure that the fiber arrays were properly aligned with the chip inputs. Then we have a binary tree splitting network, which basically splits the single optical input to four, and then it's combined with the other Butler matrix input at the MMI, followed by photodetection. We have a Butler matrix, a four-input Butler matrix, consisting of directional couplers and crossovers, which generates a linear phase progression at the output. The outputs from the binary tree and Butler matrix are combined at the MMIs, and then they impinge on a photodetector, where the optical signals are heterodyned and an RF output is obtained. So as I said, the RF tone is generated by heterodyning at the photodetectors. For the measurements, I used unmodulated lasers. One of the lasers was fed to the binary tree, and the second laser was fed to the Butler matrix. I'll be presenting the results for the Butler matrix input one. But then as part of the measurements, the time domain data was recorded and the phases between the photodetectors were measured. So for the Butler matrix, we expect linear phase progression. That is, when I select input one, I expect a phase progression of minus 45 degrees from photodetector 1 to photodetector 4. For input 2, we expect a progression of 135 degrees. For input 3, minus 135, and for input 4, 45 degrees. So here I have a screenshot of the measured response from the photodetectors. So the response is for photodetectors 1 and 2, as highlighted here. And I measured the phase between the red and the green curves. And as I said, we expect linear phase progression between the four photodetectors. So as first, I plotted the measured phases with time. The measurement time duration was 1 microsecond. And so here on the radial axis, I have the time from 0 to 1 microsecond, and the phase is plotted as the angle. So here I used two Keysight lasers, and this is the phase that I measured. So this is definitely a very random phase, and we cannot say that this is an accurate measurement. The solid lines here show what are the expected phases for different outputs. So it was necessary to decrease the phase noise, And to decrease the phase noise, I replaced one of the Keysight lasers with an NKT laser, which are the narrow line width and low phase noise lasers. So here we can see that the output 2 and 3 are stable, but there are still high variations in the output 4. This output also happens to be the output with the lowest photocurrent. So either we need to increase the signal output level by increasing the optical input power to ensure that the signal, the output is well above the noise floor, or we reduce the phase noise even further. Since it's better to not risk the chip by increasing the optical power too high, we went for lower phase noise. So this is what I obtained with two NKT lasers. Here we have lowest phase variation with time. We can say that the phase is stable over the entire measured duration, and then the accuracy is acceptable from the characterization.
So give me a second. Where did you take the two NKT lasers from? You only have one, I think, huh?
There are two in the lab. One was from Yannick's setup.
Okay. I see. Good. And to understand this diagram right, the reference was output 1 then, huh?
Yes, the output 1 is taken at 0. That's why it's also a perfect 0.
And what we see now is the offset, a passive offset that you just got by design, huh? You tried to have a 90-degree offset from the red to the green, and obviously you were very successful. You tried another 90 green from the green to the blue, and yeah, almost got there, huh? Is this
so
right?
We expected 45 degrees, but it's not what is expected exactly. The colors, the solid lines should match with the measured phases.
Aha. Okay.
But then we also found a hardware issue with the chip, thanks to David's efforts. So some more investigation is needed into that as to why the phases are not exactly why we want them.
Okay, good.
So then I will be talking about the feed network PCB, which is the next stage of the system. So the output of the beamformer is then taken to the PCB. However, there is a small issue with using coaxial cables. The visual representation looks very clean. However, the actual setup is quite messy. So we have several cables going to the bias tees with more cables, and then the output is taken from the bias tees. So when we are operating in the 60 gigahertz band, this leads to very high losses. So instead of using coaxial cables, we decided to go for a chip-on-board assembly. Which in this assembly, the photonic chip is literally placed on the circuit board, and then the electrical connection between the chip and the PCB is made by using an interposer. So now, instead of just the feed network PCB, I'll be talking about this assembly of the interposer and the PCB. So this is a picture of the fabricated PCB that we have. And here I've highlighted the main signal path. So I'll be focusing on the main signal path here. So the main signal path on the PCB begins with the grounded coplanar waveguides with an impedance matching network in the form of short circuit stubs, followed by planar bias tees implemented on the PCB to get rid of the external components. And then we have the actual feed network. Additional components visible in the picture are a placeholder for the chip. This metal patch is where a depression would be milled onto the PCB, and then the chip would be glued into the slot. And then we also have DC bias pads for providing the DC bias to the photodetectors. And then the interposer will make the electrical connection. The interposer simply consists of a passive electrical network for proper connection. And now I'll focus on the interposer assembly. So here it's a 3D model of the proposed assembly. The tiny chip is placed in a slot cut in the PCB, and we have small pads on the PCB, on the photonic chip with the output taken for the photodetector outputs. These serve as flip chip bond sites on the chip, and we also have larger pads on the PCB, which serve as flip chip bond sites on the PCB. The interposer will then make the electrical connection. And the input to the photonic chip can be given by gluing a fiber array on the chip. And as I mentioned before, we have two optical inputs, one going to the Butler matrix and one to the binary tree. An important part is that this is the first time such an assembly was attempted at IEF using two flip chip bonds. And initial results show that mechanically this assembly is feasible and it can be done. The electrical properties, the electrical fabrication process needs to be defined a bit further. And since I did not work directly with the fabrication, I won't go into the details here. Then we have the matching network and the coplanar waveguides. So on the left, we have the design, and on the right, we see a picture of the fabricated PCB. The details of the matching network design were in my intermediate talk, so I won't elaborate on this now. Then we also have a switch from coplanar waveguide to microstrip. So here, this was implemented because the planar bias T is easier to implement on microstrip, and the antenna input was also in the form of microstrip. Then we have the planar bias T. The motivation for the inspiration for implementing a planar bias T is here, and we have a DC path and an RF path. The design details for the bias T were also in my intermediate talk, so I will only talk about the measurements with the bias T. So I did a RF characterization of the bias T, and we here have the plot of a normalized transmission. I've normalized the measurements to account for connector losses. And we can see that we have a close match with simulation, particularly in the 57 to 66 gigahertz band, which is the design frequency range of the bias T. And from the plot, we can say that we can use the bias T for the 50 to 70 gigahertz range. DC characterization also showed good responses where a short circuit was as expected and an open circuit from port 1 to 2. And now finally, I'll be talking about the feed network and the antenna and the measured radiation patterns. So if we take a closer look at the antenna subsystem, we have the antenna on which a high-speed PCB is mounted, which contains feed lines. The feed lines then go to connectors, which receive a test signal. In an actual use case scenario, the signal would be from a beamformer, but for antenna testing, I used a test signal from an RF source. So this is the fabricated PCB consisting of only the feed network. Instead of going to coplanar waveguides, here we take the output in with connectors and then using RF coaxial cables. So this is the antenna array that we use. It's a planar array with 36 sub-arrays operating in the 57 to 66 gigahertz range. The antenna was received as a black box from Huber and Sooner, and each sub-array has 8 elements. For the tests, I use the 4 sub-arrays highlighted here. And for purpose of simulations, each sub-array would be treated as a single element. So then here we can treat the antenna array as a 4-element linear array with a spacing of 2.9 millimeters. The feed network PCB was designed and fabricated and mounted on the antenna using plastic screws. The design is such that the tuning wires here on the PCB coincide with the antenna inputs. And now we come to the array factor, which is an important parameter for antenna arrays. So direction of maximum directivity of the antenna array can be controlled by controlling the phase of the excitation to the antenna array. So here I have a formula for the array factor where Cn exponential j alpha n is the complex excitation to the antenna array. And then by suitably controlling the value of alpha n, we can change the direction of the main beam. So on the animation, we have the array factor for a 16-element array operating at 60 gigahertz with half wavelength spacing. And by changing the value of alpha n, I could change the direction of maximum directivity from 0 to 180 degrees. But of course, this is easy.
Give me a second. Is this now experiment or simulation?
No, this is simulation.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, this is easy to implement it's easy to implement mathematically, but when implementing practically, we need a beamforming network. So on the right, I have a schematic of the Butler matrix consisting of hybrid couplers and phase shifters. And on the left, I have the plot of the expected radiation patterns from an antenna array, from a 4-element antenna array with Butler matrix. So when input 1 of the Butler matrix is selected, I get the red plot. For input 2, I get the green plot, and so on. And now we come to the actual antenna characterization. So the anechoic chamber was used and instruments were set up inside the chamber to avoid cable loss and reflection. So here I have a picture of the setup on the right and a block diagram on the left. we have the RF source set up inside the chamber, whose output goes to the transmitting antenna, that is the antenna array and PCB combined. Then we have a receiving horn antenna, which is a standard gain horn, and the output is measured on the electrical spectrum analyzer. So now I initially excited just one array element at a time, and I'll be talking about the results from this element, that is the array element 1. So here the plot is for the measured received power at the receiving antenna for different scanning angles in the 57 to 66 gigahertz range. So the x-axis shows frequency and the y-axis shows the scanning angle. The measured received power is shown with the color. So we can clearly see the directivity of the antenna for the minus 45 to 45 degree range. Now it is also important to measure the gain of the antenna. So I calculated the antenna gain at 60 gigahertz, and this is what we obtained. As expected, we have a high gain in the minus 45 to 45 degrees range and a low gain outside this range. The gain calculation was done using gain comparison method, where a standard gain horn was used as a reference. So we also, however, we have an antenna array. So just measuring the single element radiation patterns is not enough. So I excited 2 elements at a time using an RF splitter. This was an in-phase excitation. And now I'll talk about the results from array elements 1 and 4. So here we have a similar plot of measured received power, again for scanning angle and different frequencies. Here we see 3 lobes clearly visible due to excitation to elements 1 and 4, and a higher received power in the minus 45 to 45 range. I also did a comparison with the simulated array factor at 60 gigahertz, and this is what we obtained. This plot shows the normalized radiation pattern in dB for at 60 gigahertz. The dotted line is the measured radiation pattern, while the solid line is the simulated pattern. We see a very close match between the simulated and the measured, and we can say that the array does function as expected. So to summarize, a photonic beamformer was tested. We developed several optical characterization methods and decided on which one was the most accurate. However, there were some hardware issues in the photonic chip, and hence this needs to be investigated further before a successful test. Then an integrated system was designed consisting of a double flip chip bonds and using an interposer between a PCB and a chip. The mechanical feasibility of such an assembly was demonstrated. However, the electrical properties need to be refined further. And then the antenna and feed network were tested, which shows good match with simulations. Thank you for your attention.